Hey, Browns fans, time now for a national perspective interview brought to you by Socios.com. And for that, we turn to ESPN NFL draft analyst Jordan Reid. And Jordan, first of all, how nice is it to be back at the Combine?
It's great, especially when we're talking about this atmosphere, being back on Radio Row and just being around the guys, being around the team, seeing the GMs and the coaches speaking, and, of course, the players, too. It's just great to be back.
All right, let's talk about the Browns. So 2020, great season. Going to the playoffs, get a big win. A lot of expectations last year. The Browns didn't quite live up to those expectations. How do you see this roster and the needs for general manager Andrew Berry headed into this draft?
Well, one thing I will say about Andrew Berry is I think he does a really good job of attacking what the team's needs are. I think wide receiver is definitely one glaring hole that they have right now after the Odell Beckham situation. We'll see what happens with Jarvis Landry and his contract too. But the great thing about the Browns' needs is that it aligns with all the strengths in this draft class. I think interior defensive line is somewhere that they could address, and then also edge rusher too.
All right, let's start with these receivers, and there are a lot of names to get excited about. And you hear Drake London and Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and Jamison Williams, who might have been the top guy on a lot of people's boards, and then Treylon Burks. When you look at these guys, let's talk about pick 13. If you're at pick 13, break down some of these receivers for me and who you think might be a good fit for what the Browns like to do in that offense.
Yeah, well, there's three guys I think that could be in contention at that 13th overall selection. And the first one that I'll start with is Garrett Wilson from Ohio State, who's right in the backyard of the Cleveland Browns. And he reminds me a lot of Stephon Diggs when he was coming out of Maryland, just the body control, the hands, and then he's so crafty as a route runner. And the next one I'll talk about is Treylon Burks. I think he's going to put on a show. I think he's going to burn up the turf. He's probably going to run in the low 4.4s, maybe even high 4.3s. At 6'3", 225 pounds, he's going to look the part physically too. And he's a little bit different from some of the other receivers in this class just because he's kind of like a Deebo Samuel where you want to move him all around the place. Not an overly refined route runner, but he's very strong at the catch point too. And then the last one, of course, is Drake London. He's been the buzz of draft circles ever since last year when he had 88 catches for over 1,100 yards. So I'm really excited to see Drake perform in person.
All right, so Wilson we're pretty familiar with. In fact, in some of our programs, we don't even speak his name. We'd love to see that match here for him to come up. So like Diggs, he's got some explosive playability. Then you mentioned Burks, and everybody's, we're going to try to find the next Deebo Samuel. That's easier said than done. Right. What about the fact that he hasn't really been doing it that long, but yet he goes out and leads the SEC in chunk plays, which is no small feat?
Yeah, well, the funny thing that I wrote down when I was watching this film and writing up a scouting report is that they kind of treated him like the best kid on the high school team of where they're putting him at quarterback, wide receiver. He played everything except offensive line. So I think it kind of hurt him a little bit as far as a route runner, but now he really started to blossom last season.
Do you see him as a guy that projects kind of more in the slot than outside, or ultimately he'll get outside? But he didn't face a ton of press in college, so that's one thing that'll be an adjustment for him coming to the NFL.
Yeah, but the great thing about Kevin Stefanski is that he puts his best receivers in the slot, and then on the outside, too, there's not a situation of where he pigeonholes one guy in one place or the other. He actually played Burks 82% of his snaps in the slot a season ago. And then last year, they used him more outside. Go watch the Alabama game. He was phenomenal in that when you saw his breakaway speed take over, too. So I think Burks is a really good fit for the Browns at 13.
All right, and then you mentioned London, and he's a guy that I'm curious about because you see the 6'5", you see his after-the-catch ability, which a lot of people don't talk about. You hear so much about contested catches, and some people say, that's great, right? He can catch anything. And then some people say, well, that means he can't separate. What do you see from Drake London? Can he separate, and how does that translate at this level?
Well, I think that's kind of misconstrued about him a little bit. I think he is a very good route runner overall, but I think where he kind of separates himself from more of those big-body guys that we've seen in years past, not quite pan out as far as being above the rim type of players. Sure. They weren't overly great route runners, but the great thing about London is that he's phenomenal after the catch, has that basketball background. He treats the ball like a rebound getting off of the rim, but he's able to create separation at the catch point. And he kind of has that, everybody likes to compare him to Mike Evans. He kind of reminds me of T. Higgins when he was coming out of Clemson a little bit. And we saw the season that he had in Cincinnati. I think the Browns would love to have that type of player.
Yeah, so it's quarterback's best friend. Just put it up there and let him go get it. All right, you mentioned along the defensive line. And for the Browns right now, we know Clowney's a free agent. We've got, right now questions on the interior as well. Let's start with the interior defensive line. Who are some names that Browns fans should keep an eye on, whether it's first round, second round, or even later in the draft?
Yeah, I think the second round is probably where the run on defensive tackles are going to start. But one name I love for the Browns is Travis Jones from UConn. Go turn on his tape against Clemson. He was phenomenal in that game. And then just go watch his tape down at the Senior Bowl. I think outside of Jermaine Johnson, the second from Florida State, I think he was the best player in Mobile. At 6'4", 330 pounds, you need that big plugger in the middle. And he's not just one of those guys that just holds up in the middle. He gives you some pass rush, too. So he has 3-down value.
All right, let's talk about this edge class because that could be in play at 13. Listen, the Browns obviously hope to get Jadeveon Clowney back, but you need to have succession planning there, and the Browns run a lot of what they call their cheetah package to get the 3 defensive ends on the field. And Takk McKinley, he's injured. He's a free agent as well. So that could be something that they're looking to get that third guy early, first round at 13 or even into that second round. Who are some guys you like?
Yeah, and I just mentioned one, Jermaine Johnson II from Florida State. I think he could be in contention at 13, but it wouldn't surprise me if he goes even higher. But one name I will leave you with is David Ojabo from Michigan. I think he's a player that Andrew Berry is going to like a lot, especially from an analytical standpoint. Just started playing football in 2017. Was actually high school teammates with Odafe Owe in Baltimore, who had a lot of success in Baltimore. They were high school teammates, and he was the one that convinced him to actually play football. He has a lot of qualities that are similar to Odafe Owe when he was coming out. So Ojabo, I think, would be a phenomenal selection at 13. But if you're looking for more of a later on down the line type of player, keep an eye on D'Angelo Malone from Western Kentucky, whose body is a little bit underdeveloped, but as far as a pass rusher, he knows how to attack the quarterback.
If you had any piece of advice to our fans watching this who, want to kind of enhance their ability to scout, and I noticed you mentioned a couple of times some of these players, you watch them against the best competition, whether it be Clemson, whether it be Alabama. What's something that you would tell them in terms of what games to seek out and how to kind of watch and what they're looking for?
Well, actually, when I first started, I had to watch games on YouTube. That's how I was able to get my film. And the big thing about scouting is just reps. And you have to figure out what type of player you like and then what are some of the characteristics that you like at the position too. And everybody is different. Yeah. I may like big body type of contested type of receivers, while you may like those speedy, take the top of the defense type of receivers. So it's just a matter of what type of flavor or what type of player or characteristics that you like in positions, and then just go from there.
Jordan, thank you so much for the time, for giving us some national perspective here, brought to you by Socios.com. Follow him on Twitter. Check him out at ESPN, doing great work. Thanks so much.
Thanks as always, Nathan.